He didn't expect hostility. He expected formality, the neutral politeness reserved for people whose time might matter. Instead, the moment he stepped into the hotel lobby, something shifted. Not silence exactly, but a thinning of attention, as if the space had quietly agreed not to see him. The marble floors gleamed, the chandeliers scattered light like currency, and clusters of executives laughed easily near the windows. He adjusted the leather portfolio under his arm and walked forward anyway, steady, unhurried, used to rooms that underestimated him. She was impossible to miss. Perfect posture, tailored suit, confidence worn like armor. She laughed loudly with two men whose watches probably cost more than his first apartment. When he stopped a respectful distance away and introduced himself, extending his hand, her expression didn't soften. It curdled. She stared at his hand as if it carried something contagious, then took a step back, keeping her own hands buried in her pockets. Her voice came sharp and public, asking who had allowed him in. The nearby conversation slowed, curiosity replacing ease. He tried to explain, calmly, clearly, that they had a scheduled meeting. He gave his name. He referenced the emails, the confirmations, the time. She didn't listen. She looked him over instead, head to toe, cataloging details she had already decided meant disqualification. She said this was a private meeting for serious people. She said he was interrupting. Then, without lowering her voice, she called for security, adding that she would involve the police if he didn't leave immediately. Phones appeared. Someone angled for a better view. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It was curated. He lowered his hand slowly, feeling the familiar weight in his chest, the one that came from knowing this moment would be filed away with others like it. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. When the guards arrived, he told them he would walk out on his own. One of them hesitated, uncomfortable, but the other moved decisively, guiding him toward the doors as if this were procedure, not judgment. The walk across the lobby stretched longer than it should have. Every step echoed, every stare pressed in. He kept his head up, his pace even. At the threshold, he paused for half a second and looked back. She was already smoothing her jacket, already turning away, already reclaiming the space as if nothing of consequence had occurred. He stepped outside into the cold air, letting it settle his pulse. He checked his phone, read the single message waiting, and typed a brief reply. Cancel the rest. Book the flight back. She had no idea what she had just done. 3 months earlier, her company had been untouchable. Headlines praised her vision. Panels invited her insight. Investors chased proximity. Now the numbers on her screen told a different story. Cash draining faster than confidence. Runway measured in weeks, not quarters. Rejections piling up, some polite, some blunt. She deleted the harsher feedback and told herself they lacked imagination. But imagination doesn't keep payroll running. Only money does, and she was running out of places to ask for it. Across the country, in a high-rise overlooking a city that never bothered to learn his name properly, he poured coffee and reviewed markets. His office was spare, functional, built for thinking rather than display. He had grown up learning how quickly appearances misled, how often respect was conditional. He dressed the way he did on purpose. It filtered people efficiently. Those who listened stayed. Those who judged saved him time. When his team mentioned concerns about the company's culture, he nodded. Numbers mattered, but behavior mattered more. He had insisted on meeting her in person. Face-to-face revealed things spreadsheets never could. His assistant had confirmed everything weeks ago, sent bios, profiles, context. There had been no confusion, only assumption. He finished his coffee, already cool, already perfect, and made his decision without drama. He didn't call. He didn't post. He simply removed the opportunity from the table. Back in her office, she had already forgotten the man in the lobby. She focused on salvaging what she could, lining up calls, rehearsing optimism. When her assistant hesitated at the door later that morning, tablet clutched too tightly, she waved her in impatiently. The question that followed landed like ice water. the name, the firm, the confirmation. The article pulled up on the screen, complete with photos, figures, and a net worth that made her breath hitch. The room tilted. She stared, searching for an alternate explanation that didn't exist. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. Every detail aligned too cleanly. The casual dress, the philosophy, the interviews she had never read because she never bothered to look. She called the number she had just deleted. Voicemail. She called again and again. Nothing. Panic replaced arrogance. Fast and merciless. By afternoon, the story had already started moving without her. A vague post from an observer. A call from a board member. Questions she couldn't answer without admitting what she had done. She drafted apologies that sounded hollow even to her. She promised herself she would fix it if given the chance. But chances, she was learning, were not guaranteed. That evening, as the city lights came on outside her window, she sat alone with the realization that she had revealed something she couldn't retract. Not a mistake of scheduling, a mistake of character. Somewhere over the country, a plane carried away the only person who could have saved her company, and he was not coming back. She boarded the overnight flight without changing clothes, without sleep, without a plan that extended beyond showing up. Pride had evaporated sometime between the third unanswered call and the first headline. What remained was urgency, stripped of decoration. In the cabin's dim light, she rehearsed sentences that collapsed as soon as she tested them. Apologies sounded transactional. Explanations sounded evasive. She stared at the seat back and counted minutes the way people count rosaries, hoping repetition could become absolution. Morning found her in a lobby even quieter than the one she had ruled days earlier. The floors were white, the air deliberate, the reception desk immaculate. She approached with the careful tone of someone who knows the rules now apply to her. No appointment, just a request. The receptionist listened, professional, kind, unmoved, meetings all day. She nodded and said she would wait. It wasn't strategy. It was submission to time. She sat by the windows where light made no promises and let hours stack up without complaint. People passed. Some recognized her. A few whispered. None engaged. When coffee arrived, she thanked the server and held the cup like proof she still belonged somewhere. At noon, she sent flowers with a note written by hand, asking for 15 minutes to apologize in person. Not to pitch, not to negotiate. To apologize. The elevators chimed and disappointed her again and again. Waiting rearranged her sense of self, sanding it down until excuses no longer fit. In a conference room without windows, he finally agreed to see her. He didn't stand when she entered. He didn't offer a hand. He invited her to sit and let silence do the opening work. When she began to speak, he stopped her gently. He said the problem wasn't ignorance of his resume. It was certainty about his worth before he spoke. He asked whether she would have done the same to a man in a suit. She answered honestly because lying would have been easier earlier. Not now. He listened without interrupting as she admitted what she had done, what it revealed, and why it mattered beyond her. When she finished, he laid out conditions without flourish. Public accountability, independent audits, structural change with timelines, personal cost that couldn't be outsourced. He said he wasn't punishing her. He was protecting people who never got a second meeting. She agreed because there was nothing left to protect except what came after. The press conference was hotter than she expected. Lights pressed close. Questions cut fast. She didn't soften the language. She named the harm and her role in it. She described what would change and how it would be measured. When asked whether words were enough, she said no. When asked about her job, she said she would step aside. The room went quiet in the way that follows an answer no one prepared for. Cameras captured the moment authority seated itself on purpose. The fallout was immediate and uneven. Invitations stopped. Seats emptied. Doors closed without explanation. It hurt in small ways and instructive ones. She learned how absence is enforced without announcement. She learned how long memory can be when it has receipts. Meanwhile, the company moved under new leadership. Reports came back unflinching. Numbers exposed patterns she could no longer pretend were isolated. Promotions changed. Complaints were investigated. Meetings sounded different. The work was not cinematic. It was slow and expensive and necessary. He issued a brief statement and nothing more. The investment closed with safeguards that could pull it back just as quickly. He spoke to students and founders about bias without drama, about systems without villains, about the difference between apology and repair. He said dignity shouldn't require credentials to be recognized. He said respect isn't earned by wardrobe. He said silence can be a tool, but accountability must be practice. Months passed. The culture inside the company shifted in ways that didn't fit a headline. New faces at the table, different voices in the room, fewer jokes at someone else's expense. When mistakes happened, they were named early. She attended meetings as a listener now, not a center. Watching leadership done well is a humbling education. A year later, the same hotel hosted an event that looked nothing like before. The lobby held a mix of styles and accents and ease. He arrived the way he always did. She waited at the door, not for spectacle, but for courtesy done right. She extended her hand and meant it. He shook it, professional, unadorned. They walked in together without cameras chasing them because the point had already been made. On stage, numbers told a story of recovery, but faces told a better one. The new chief executive spoke about process and patience. When asked how this change began, he said it started with listening after failure and committing beyond embarrassment. She was asked what she would tell her former self. She said assumptions have weight and power magnifies it. She said change costs more than reputation and less than denial. Afterward, alone for a moment, he said he hadn't stayed for her. He stayed for people who don't get to be recognized before they're respected. She thanked him and meant it differently now. They parted without ceremony. The lesson didn't end with them. It moved outward, into classrooms and boardrooms, into policies and pauses before decisions. It lived in the uncomfortable seconds when someone chose to look again. Power had not shouted. It had waited, watched, and then enforced what dignity requires. If that stayed with you, don't let it pass. Ask yourself where you learned to assume and where you can unlearn it. Share the moment that changed the room for you. Silence can protect harm, or it can prepare correction. The difference is choice.